Welcome back to another video. Today we're out here to talk about radios, and today I want to give a kind of first review. I'm going to fly a little bit longer, but I really want to give my initial impressions and first 2 weeks of flying this. The RadioMaster Pocket. Yes, it is in the fluorescent yellow color, which to me looks more green, but again, I'm colorblind, so who the freak knows. But today I want to talk about the RadioMaster Pocket, compare it to my trusty current Whoop radio, the RadioMaster Zorro, and my current 5-inch radio, the RadioMaster Boxer. Yeah, I forgot the Boxer. And I really want to talk about its size, how it feels in the hand, what it feels most comparable to, and whether or not I think I want to stick with it. I'm going to dig into all of it. I have about 2 weeks of flying. I probably have a total of 25 Whoop packs and about 20 to 25 5-inch and 3-inch freestyle packs into it. So I feel like I've got a good idea about what I like and what I don't like about the radio, and I think I can give you some comprehensive thoughts. Because at the end of the day, once again, it is a RadioMaster product. So as far as the performance goes, I think the ELRS receiver works fantastic. It feels as responsive, it connected as easily, it's as user-friendly as any other ELRS item is. It basically reminds me almost identically of the Zorro. I haven't always been as RadioMaster-centric as I am currently. Before now, I was flying a FreeSky radio. I flew the DJI Big Black Controller radio. I've flown the DJI Controller 2, that little gray PlayStation-looking one. I've flown a Tango, a Mambo, and I think that's it. But I've kind of tasted and sampled a bunch of different radios. I've also flown a couple of packs on a friend's Jumper T16 as well as a T20. And I've flown one pack on the iFlight Commando radio. I was not a fan of that radio. But I have used a whole bunch of different radios. In this review, I'm not going to really compare the Boxer to the RadioMaster Pocket all that much, because the Boxer really is in that airplane radio size form factor. It's really, while it is compact for a radio of that type, it really isn't a compact radio like the Zorro and the RadioMaster Pocket. First and foremost, I want to dive into one of its biggest advantages, and that is its size. It is small. It is really, really small. When compared to the RadioMaster Zorro, it is a significantly smaller radio. The screen is a little bit smaller, its overall form factor is smaller, and unlike the Boxer, it has a quaint little folding antenna here on the back, which I think really benefits it. For me, the size actually is much more akin to an Xbox controller. Both in thickness, it is a little thicker than the Xbox controller, but overall, this very much feels like a game controller in your hand. So if you like a game controller radio, this is your man. There also is a full JR bay in the back, so if you have a Crossfire setup and you want to run it in this radio, you can just pop it right back here. So it's a nice feature to have in there. It's got this nice little protector on it, and that's one thing I think RadioMaster does really well, is these little touches that make the user experience that much better. Now that I can't get this back on. Another big positive for this radio is the battery life. Basically it lasts forever. Underneath here you'll see there is a wonderful thing called an 18650, and unlike the Zorro, which uses 18350s, which are basically like half-sized versions of these batteries, the battery life in here is fantastic. Even after an hour or so of flying, I have yet to see below 8.0 volts from those batteries, so it seems like the battery life is going to be definitely all day, so you don't have to worry about being diligent about turning off your radio. I mean, I still would, because it's good to not let it sit there and overheat. I think the battery life is fantastic. I don't think you can go wrong when it comes to battery life and the RadioMaster Pocket. I also like that in the battery compartment itself, they do put these little notches in here, which allow you to put your control sticks, these little nubbins in here, and that way you've got a place to store it, so that way the front of the radio is almost flat, and it's super clean, super easy to put away, and they do give you this nice little fabric bag to put the radio in for some protection while you're carrying it around in your backpack. So you just throw it in there and you're good to go. We've covered comprehensively the size of the radio. Let's talk about the radio itself. First and foremost, again, you can't really look past it, but my radio is yellow now. And I will say that swapping the radio cover, especially since I've covered radio customization before, was very simple with this radio. It wasn't too bad, everything was well laid out, and getting it back together was a pretty easy process. There wasn't any real fiddly bits. The only little bit of a tricky part is there's a little metal clip on the inside here that holds the radio's antenna that comes up into here and that is a little tricky to kind of get out without dropping it and letting it fall around the case. So I did have to search for that for a second, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward to swap. So 100% pick your color if you're going to get your radio, because why not swap it? It looks cool. On this radio, the sticks are not your traditional stick ends. To fit here nicely in the back of the radio, they basically had to go with something much more akin to DJI's stick ends for the gimbals. But you can replace it, so if these don't fit your flying style, or you want something that gives you a little more precision, or you want it to make it feel like the gimbals are slightly larger, that's one way you can go about it, and I think I am going to get a set of replacement stick ends. They most likely won't fit in this little pocket anymore, but for me, the way I kind of take care of stuff, the way I care for it, and I like to put things in boxes, I'm not really going to have too much of an issue with that. As far as the radio goes on the gimbal front, they actually are great. They're easily adjustable underneath these rubber covers. As long as you have a relatively thin driver, you can adjust the gimbal tension with the radio closed so you can get it to exactly what you like, which is really nice. The overall feel of the plastics for the body, excellent. And again, the performance of the gimbals, while they're definitely shorter, and I do feel it, I'm not the most sensitive person with it, but I do feel the lack of resolution and the lack of throw with these gimbals. Compared to the Zorro and compared to the, obviously compared to the Boxer. But for me, that did hamper it a little bit. But overall, I think it actually felt fantastic. So again, if you like this style and this size radio, I think the performance of the gimbals is great. Obviously for the software, it's Edge TX. What more is there to say? It works exactly like Edge TX should work. It's easy to customize. Once again, I put the Portal themes on here, so...
Let's not crash too much today.
Yeah. It basically behaves just like the Boxer. Thank you, GLaDOS. It behaves exactly like the Boxer and the Zorro for me, and so everything binds to this radio is bound to the Zorro, is bound to the Boxer, so I can go in between each of these radios without too much hassle. And so overall, again, I think performance-wise, it works great. Next, let's dive into the cons of this radio, because it's not perfect. And the first thing I want to talk about is where they put the buttons. Actually, no, hold on. Let's talk about the quality of the buttons. I don't know if you can hear it, but it is clicky, but the buttons drag a little bit. So they don't feel super smooth. It is plastic on plastic, so I eventually think it will self-clearance itself enough to be a little bit more smooth, but overall, the button feel is not great. Sticking in the same vein as the buttons, my first real complaint with this radio when I picked it up was that this down here is not a, it's a momentary switch. It's not a standard on-off button. So when you're setting up your radio, this is generally the arm button. You can see that cool little green LED in there. And then this is going to be my pre-arm. The number of times I've already come back and pressed this, because on the Boxer, in roughly that same spot, you have the button for arm. And so I do wish these were swapped. Again, this is going to be me because I fly different radios, and I haven't completely gotten used to this being pre-arm and this being arm up here. But overall, I don't like that button placement all that much. Also, I don't really use a rotary dial, so I think for me, this potentiometer selector dial is not great, not super useful. I kind of wish it was either another 3-position switch or another trigger type button. Then you've got your 2 buttons up here, which I set to my help switches, which beeper and turtle mode, and then on this side, angle mode, air mode, and air mode off. So it has enough switches, I think, for most FPV pilots, but overall there's not a ton of switches on here, and the switches don't feel fantastic. And that, I feel, is probably the biggest con of this radio. Another con of this radio, and this one's kind of annoying, is this little loop on the front. For most of the standard battery straps that have these thicker connectors on the end of it, this is not really big enough. As you see, it doesn't really close in there. This is super frustrating. I probably will end up drilling out this little radio lanyard loop a little bit to make it more in line with the size of the RadioMaster Zorro, which, just for demonstration purposes, got the newbie drone strap here. Perfect. Fits in perfect. So I think I'm going to have to modify that somehow, either just drill it out and make it bigger, or find a different lanyard hoop to put in there. Most of the other nice radio lanyards use this same loop, so I know the Rotor Riot one doesn't work all that well. and I've got to assume most of the other premium lanyard straps use this same buckle. So if you like using a lanyard strap, know that you will have to either change out, add an additional loop, or drill out that lanyard loop. This is a fantastic radio, and if you're looking for an inexpensive radio, you're a person with smaller hands, or you're looking for something, say, to keep with your sim or keep with your tiny whoop kit, this is definitely something I would recommend considering, and at $64, I don't know that you're going to find anything better for a similar price. Also, I would highly recommend changing out the case, make it custom, make it your own, switch out the sound packs. It is, like every other RC radio, pretty easy to customize, and I would also recommend getting a set of longer stick ends. Me personally, I like a little more throw, and so if you like a little bit more throw on your gimbals, definitely check out an aftermarket set of stick ends. I'll throw my favorites down in links below. Those will be Amazon affiliate links like everything else. It doesn't cost you anything, but gives a little kickback so I can keep buying stupid stuff like more radios. I think that pretty much sums it up. It really does feel in line with all of RadioMaster's other products. Fantastic gimbals, great overall layout, great consideration to size and performance. Unlike the Zorro, it has great battery life. And so again, all in all, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a great radio, would highly recommend it as a secondary radio or a primary radio, again, if you're on a budget or have smaller hands. It's not going to take the place of my Boxer. That thing is definitely going to be my primary radio because it just feels so good in my hands. I have a little bit bigger hand, so it fits, and it's the right size for me. But this may be taking the place of the Zorro in my tiny whoop kit. Only time will tell on that one, and I definitely will check back in like 6 months or so, once I've had a lot more time to fly this radio. With that said, catch you next video. Bye. In this, I'm not going to compare these two radios all that much. I think the Boxer is in a completely